If Donald Trump's victory last November was not enough of a wake-up call for the Democratic Party, then the first months of his second term should be. In fact, while the Democratic Party continues to ruminate and navel-gaze about its future, Americans across the political spectrum are paying attention and taking action. We've seen this manifest itself in the large-scale nationwide protests that have spread over the past several months. Americans are taking to the streets and to town halls trying to do what they can, but they're not being led by the Democratic Party. They're left wanting more. People have been waiting for a party to emerge that can get beyond the increasingly self-indulgent debates about being more moderate or more progressive and actually rise to the challenge of standing up to Donald Trump and holding the line against the Republican Party, actually fighting back, not just debating the merits of what kind of fighting back is best. Back in March, an NBC News poll found that only 27% of registered voters had a positive view of the Democratic Party. That represents the lowest positive rating for the party since NBC began asking that question in 1990. The same poll showed that people wanted to see more fight out of Democrats. 65% said they wanted Democrats to stick to their positions, even if it results in gridlock in Washington, versus just 32% who thought Democrats should make compromises with Trump. Now, that's not to say that there haven't been and don't continue to be some remarkably brave and tenacious fighters inside the structure of the Democratic Party. There are some Democrats or people who caucus with Democrats who hear this call for action and have been setting an example. Senator Chris Murphy of Connecticut understood very early how big an emergency Donald Trump's election actually was. Soon after last November's election, he began posting videos on social media that featured him giving blunt and honest assessments about the Democratic Party's failures. Just straight talk about what went wrong. Got a lot of attention. Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett's profile has skyrocketed because she's been able to channel the outrage that many Americans have been feeling about Republican hypocrisy. It led her to being featured in a profile in The Atlantic recently, which dubbed her, quote, a Democrat for the Trump era. Recall last spring, Bernie Sanders and the independent senator from Vermont, who caucuses with Democrats, launched his Fighting Oligarchy tour amid Elon Musk's takeover of the federal government. He was joined by other progressive stalwarts, like the New York Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for some legs of the tour. The pair drew out tens of thousands of people in single events across the western half of the United States. More than 30,000 people attended their event in Denver. Another 30,000 came out for their Los Angeles rally. There was a massive turnout for the No Kings nationwide day of protests as well. An estimated 4 to 6 million people took part in that back in June. And add to that the numerous packed and lively congressional town halls that we've seen across the country since Donald Trump took office. The recent House redistricting fight triggered by Texas Republicans has launched Texas Democrats like Jean Wu, James Tallarico, Nicole Collier into the national consciousness. It's given an even bigger boost to California Governor Gavin Newsom, who has demonstrated how to step up in the face of attacks from Donald Trump and the GOP. He's also found an effective and attention-grabbing way to hit back at Trump by mimicking Trump himself. Take this post, for example. Not even J.D. Just Dance Vance can save Trump from the disastrous maps war he has started. Not even his eyeliner lines look as pretty as the California map lines. He will always fail, as he always does. Sad. And I, the peacetime governor, our nation's favorite, will save America once again. Many are now calling me Gavin Christopher Columbus Newsom because of the maps. Thank you for your attention to this matter. GCN. Gavin Christopher Newsom. Might do the Democratic Party some good to pay attention to what these various people are doing because it's resonating. They've tapped into something that the American people want to see from the people who actually represent them. Joining me now, Thom Hartmann, syndicated radio talk show host of the Thom Hartmann program. Hartmann is prolific. He's published some 25 books, including The Crash of 2016, The Plot to Destroy America, and What We Can Do to Stop It. I'm also joined by David Pepper, former chairman of the Ohio Democratic Party. He's the author of numerous books, including Saving Democracy, a user's manual for every American, second edition, The Trump Era. Welcome to you, gentlemen. Thom, let me start with you, because you and I talk about this a lot, where the solution is going to come from. And I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, I think you feel that the Democratic Party can and should take action to save itself. And I'm sitting with a bunch of people who I think are worried that the Democratic Party may not be up to the job, that the people are ahead of the party by a long shot right now. Give me your evaluation of this.
Well, sometimes that's what happens. And I think a good example is on the Republican side, interestingly enough, is back in 2008, 2009, after, we elected a black president. the right mobilized. And there was this thing called the Concord Project. Their videos are still up on YouTube. You can watch them. And, this guy just talking to the camera saying the most powerful political position in America is the precinct committee person, something you've probably never heard of. That if you go to your local party and you volunteer to become a precinct committee person, you get to write the platform for the party, at least locally, which filters up. You get to pick the primary candidates. So if all the primary candidates you pick are Tea Partiers, then you're definitely going to have a Tea Party congressman, because those are going to be, one of them is going to come through the primary. When your member of Congress comes into town, the first people that they talk to are the precinct committee people. These are very, very powerful positions. And I've been encouraging people to get progressives in particular to get inside the Democratic Party and start taking on these positions, because we've got to energize this party. I find it also particularly kind of wild that the leadership skills that we saw with Franklin Roosevelt and Lyndon Johnson are just so critical now. I used to ridicule Thomas Carlyle's great man theory of history, that turning points of history also involve people who are able to step forward. But increasingly, I'm looking we need serious leadership in the Democratic Party. And I think Gavin Newsom stepping up and J.B. Pritzker in particular are offering some good role models.
J.B. Pritzker just talking actually last night about Donald Trump's threat to send the National Guard into Chicago. I saw, David, you were nodding when Tom was saying this stuff, because you've argued this for a long time, that if you're going to do this, start locally. Your dangers are local, as we've seen in Florida, as we've seen in Texas, as we've seen in Ohio and other states, and the solutions might be local. I'm talking about people showing up to their town hall meetings or No Kings marches, but you also talk about your legislature and your local elections being the place that you should be paying attention.
Absolutely. Most of the damage happening right now is through the state houses. Texas is a perfect example. It's the state reps and the state senators that are the ones doing the gerrymandering. So the damage is coming from the bottom up, and the damage at the state level started years ago. And so as much, I agree with your prior guests. Tom and I talk all the time. I, of course, agree with him. But the thing that we are doing still today, as much as I love what Gavin Newsom's doing, most of what we are doing is still just defense. We're in blue areas doing what we can defensively. What's offense? Offense is seeing that 26% of the Republican state reps in Texas who just gerrymandered that state weren't opposed last November. Offense is then running against all of them aggressively, knowing you may not win, but knowing they need to be held accountable, not just for gerrymandering, but for the fact that with Governor Abbott, they're destroying Texas public schools and Friday night lights and that whole culture through private voucher schemes. And you're holding them accountable on Medicaid cuts. And so in addition to doing what we have to do in the blue states and fighting back, in blue areas, we must finally, and this is what the Republicans did, again, as Tom said, in 2009 and 10, they didn't just go to bat in the places they thought they would win. They went to states like Michigan and Pennsylvania and Ohio that they had just lost. And they said, we're going to fight there too. And we're getting there. We're doing better than we were a few years ago when I first started writing these books in frustration. But the idea, again, of course they're going to keep gerrymandering and doing all these other things if they know that a quarter of them or more don't even have an opponent in the next election.
Yep.
That's an incentive to be an extremist. And it's never an incentive to hold back sometimes and do the right thing. With one little final point, the crowds that we are seeing aren't exciting because of the great speakers up on stage. They're exciting because that should be where we're recruiting people to run. Mm-hmm. In those crowds, in those red areas, in those town hall meetings, in those groups are the future candidates and the thousands of people. We need to support them running not just where we're most comfortable, but in all the red districts where they're doing most of the damage.
Tom, I don't know where I first learned this thing about how many people in supermajority Republican state legislatures run unopposed. Might have been David who told me or the Justins in Tennessee. Fascinating. In the 2000s in America, people run unopposed. There should be no unopposed elections anywhere in America at any level.
Yeah, it amplifies the importance of this message. And I think it's worth noting that when the Concord Project started that thing that I was talking about, just trying to get people into the Republican Party at the local level, into school boards, into precinct committee positions within the local party, they succeeded. Over the next 5 years, during the Obama presidency, the Tea Party basically took over the entire Republican Party. This group. And when you look at the policy positions that progressives, people like Bernie Sanders, have been taking for years and years and years, they're really completely in line with where FDR and LBJ were with the New Deal and the Great Society. And I think it's time for the Democratic Party to seriously think about branding something as like the New Deal or the Great Society, and pushing these things hard. Pick three solid things. The right to vote and getting money out of politics, and the cleaning up politics, free health care for everybody, free college for everybody, just a couple of simple things, and push them really hard as core issues. But we have to, in a large way, the Democratic Party has to stop talking so much about issues and start talking about values. And all of those things can be put in the context of the value of a democracy where you have clean election, the value of everybody being able to achieve their own potential, the value of the dignity of work, the value in each one of these cases. The Democratic Party has so much potential here if we can just get it moving.